Lore. Lore never changes. Bethesda contradicted lore to gather shills and wealth. Microsoft created an empire in its lust for gold and intellectual property. Zenimax shaped a battered franchise into a gaming superpower. But lore never changes. The Fallout TV show is often praised as a faithful adaptation of the Fallout franchise. I would like to politely disagree. My basis for this disagreement is the tendency of the show to constantly contradict the games. Am I able to name all those countless contradictions? Well...
How could I possibly refuse a request phrased like that?
1. Wastelanders being inherently radioactive to a degree that ought to be lethal. 2. Wastelanders being dumb morons who don't understand how cutlery works. 3. Stimpaks being magic heal potions. 4. The LA Boneyard being a deserted wasteland with no evidence of post-war buildings, despite it being the NCR industrial heartland. 5. The name Boneyard not being used once in the entire series to describe the LA area the show takes place in. 6. The settlement of Adatum, along with factions such as the Gunrunners, Blades, and Followers of the Apocalypse not existing in the Boneyard. If they did, they would be expected to have a far bigger presence in the story. It must be asked, why did we not see the biggest factions of the Boneyard in a story set entirely in the Boneyard? The answer is likely because the writers didn't know they existed or otherwise didn't care. 7. 4 vaults sitting in the open, undisguised in the Master's backyard and unplundered despite the Master knowing where the vaults are near him due to taking over the demonstration vault in the LA Boneyard. 8. 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐺 describes vault dwellers as an endangered species despite vault dwellers founding major settlements such as Shady Sands, Arroyo, Vault City, and a little place he might know called the Boneyard.
It's just east of here, an underground shelter from the war. Most families in NCR came from it, so it's rightfully ours.
You're wearing a vault suit. I never imagined I would meet an inhabitant of another vault. This Vault 13, where is it located? Oh, now I understand. But what proof do you have that your ancestor was from a vault? Very well, let me see. These are authentic. Unbelievable. You are a survivor from another vault. Welcome to our city. You must have suffered much in the outside world.
9. 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐺 says this is a lawless place despite the NCR, the Legion, New Vegas, the She Empire, and numerous other law-abiding nations surrounding the Boneyard. If anything, lawlessness is the exception, not the rule, and vaults certainly are not the only civilized places on Earth. You may argue 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐺 is enclave, therefore it checks out he's underestimating the civilization of other peoples. I would counter, no, clearly 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐺 doesn't have that opinion if he's willing to entrust such a powerful technology as cold fusion to the NCR. 10. Wastelanders being depicted as rude, greedy, incompetent peasants, as opposed to, you know, human beings. 11. Philly existing in the Boneyard. 12. Settlements being made out of recycled crap as opposed to adobe buildings, paved streets, dilapidated pre-war buildings, and favela-like buildings. Even in Fallout 1, over a century ago, things were better constructed. 13. Vault dwellers are considered by Wastelanders to be... I quote, dipshits, and incapable of surviving despite the titular Vault Dweller literally saving humanity, and being held in such high regard by the NCR, they gave him a statue. Then there's the fact that most people, including Ma June herself, are descended from Vault Dwellers in the Boneyard, including the Followers of the Apocalypse, who are held in high regard by basically everyone as humanitarians. 14. Wastelanders thinking vaults were places for rich people to hide in despite it being public knowledge after Fallout 2 that they were used for social experiments by the Enclave. 15. Vault-Tec making cyanide pills instead of vaults. 16. This thing being called a gulper despite there already being gulpers in Fallout. 17. A lake in the middle of the California desert when Chief Hanlon explained in New Vegas that all the lakes in the NCR were drained. A clever historical parallel that references the similar case of the draining of the Tulare in the 1800s, once the largest body of water in the United States west of the Mississippi. It was drained for the sake of private landowners at the cost of indigenous tribes, the ecosystem, California's natural beauty, and those exact same short-sighted private landowners who drained the Tulare of its water as they discover to their shock and horror it's rather difficult to use a lake for irrigation when it no longer exists. Things that are very very thematically relevant in regards to the NCR. If only we had someone writing Fallout with a genuine interest in the history of the Wild West. One that went beyond an infantile fascination with corny spaghetti westerns. If that were the case, this ingeniously subtle bit of world building would have been appreciated, instead of retconned for the sake of an action sequence for a target audience that enjoys finger-based monstrosities, whoever that particular breed of degenerate would be.
We now return to Finger and Finger on the Finger Network.
Yeah, I think we prefer our old TV. But Finger TV is way better, right, Munt? He loves it!
18. This random radioactive pail of water implies every water source is radioactive without an actual source of radiation, despite bodies of water on the west coast not being inherently radioactive. 19. Slavery, or otherwise human trafficking, existing in the heart of NCR territory, where the anti-slaver faction, the Rangers, almost certainly operate.
To protect against all forms of tyranny. As simple as that. 30, 40 years ago, the wasteland was full of despots. Slavers, raiders, tough-talking hoodlums with gangs who'd like to kick around towns. Back then, the NCR military was still young. Couldn't cover much ground. It took groups like ours to tip the balance back to the good guys.
20. Mr. Handies can fix missing digits with magic laser beams and a necrotic finger. 21. Ghouls require a headshot to die. They even made a joke about this in Fallout 3, but obviously somebody didn't get it. 22. Power armor locking a person inside and needing a second person to unlock it once its power source is removed. 23. Right away making radiation disappear by magic and not by expelling it from the body through... well, you know. 24. Fiends being cannibals and also in the boneyard somehow, instead of the chemodected raiders we all know and love from the Mojave. Frankly, of all the awful things the fiends do, cannibalism's the one crime against humanity they are not known for. 25. Shady Sands being several hundred miles south of where it should be.
Don't tell me he's headed for California. Oh, well, good luck. What's this? Well, our little northern friend. It looks like he really is going to California. Oh, well, maybe his master's there. Well, here's that determined dog again. He's really serious about this California situation. Well, our four-legged friend warily approaches his goal. What determination. He's made it!
26. Shady Sands having a tiny 32,000 population, despite the NCR having 1 million people by Fallout New Vegas. 27. Nuclear weapons making gigantic craters, like something out of Looney Tunes, and the NCR not just immediately rebuilding Shady Sands with their wealth of resources. Hiroshima started rebuilding almost as soon as the fallout had settled. This is what Hiroshima looked like before, and this is a decade later. 28. The NCR apparently being one small town that didn't work out, as opposed to an entire republic comprising of multiple states.
I don't have time to discuss all the different aspects of the NCR with you, but if you want it all in a nutshell, the NCR is progress. If you wander around the wasteland, you'll find all sorts of tribes, villages, and such where people spend most of their time trying to survive. The NCR gives its citizens a shot at something more. We have laws, currency, healthcare, government, all the things that were lost. It's not perfect, but it's worth protecting, which is why we also have the largest military in existence.
What happened?
It's the same thing that always happens.
Who's laughing now?
29. A kid surviving a nuclear blast in a fridge. They even made jokes about that in New Vegas. 30. Vault-Tec owning a hospital for some reason.
There could be anything in there.
Yeah. Like a first aid kit.
For God's sake, don't look behind you!
31. The vaults clearly haven't opened yet, despite all the vaults except Vault 101 having opened by 2277. 32. The blackboard implying the NCR existed a decade before Shady Sands was its capital, implying the NCR existed independently of Shady Sands, and Shady Sands didn't become NCR.
Was Shady Sands. Most folks call it NCR now. New California Republic. Pretty impressive name, huh?
33. The blackboard, supported by the library book, Lucy saying the lockdown was in 77 and the age of the characters.
2. In the Great Plague of 77, everyone had to quarantine. They couldn't work the farms together. People starved. My mother included.
And finally, Common Sense, depicting the nuclear bombing of Shady Sands in 2277, despite New Vegas mentioning Shady Sands/NCR several times and taking place in 2281. 34. The NCR citizens, despite being civilized, normal people, are all now blood-drinking satanic cultists.
I'm a private in the NCR Army, and I've been proudly serving for 2 years now. Although if you were to ask what I'm doing right this instant, I'm patrolling the farms. It's a safe post, but a little boring. I do get to take shots at marauding mole rats every once in a while, and that's always fun.
Oh, I'm not. I'm making my way to New Vegas. They say anything goes there, and best of all, the NCR can't mess it up for you. I'll get there eventually. I've heard that you can't even get into the Strip unless you're rich. Born and raised, things back in California are better than they've ever been, according to my grandpa. The raiders are mostly gone now, and it's easy enough to get a job at one of the mills or farms. But now there's taxes and laws and other things. The NCR keeps things safe and orderly, but it's all very boring. So I came out east, towards the frontier.
Lord, that was a long time ago. Hardly remember who I was then. Just a naive girl. The one you call the Vault Dweller. Is he still alive? Yes. There's a resemblance. You've got the same fire, too. I was always afraid that he was nothing but a skeleton somewhere in the desert. Figures. Well, I was pretty young when we met. There was a gang of raiders, the Khans, who had gotten hold of me. Things were looking pretty bad when all of a sudden this stranger shows up and rescues me. Your Vault Dweller. I used to envy him that. I wanted a life of adventure, but I stayed here and took over as mayor when my dad died. Been running this place and building NCR ever since. Guess it turned out to be a pretty big life after all.
Hold up. What's the password? Head on through.
Here you go. I hope this helps. Welcome. There's food and water here for any citizen of the NCR. Please, have some. No, I'm afraid we don't. Don't you have a friend you wanted to bring in? You were right. But here, take another helping for your friend. It'll be our secret.
Greetings. Your business in Shady Sands might be... I know of no village. Well, to my regret, I have not. Which begs the question, how did you make that passage? Yes, yes. I shall believe you, for now. But we do not trust easily, especially those who might be dangerous. Know that Seth and I will be watching you.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, we'll see if I stay. You'll stay.
Pleasure to meet you. I'm Dr. Thomas Hildern, Director of Operations, OSI East. The Office of Science and Industry. It's a rather expansive topic. I could talk for hours, but I'm sure I'd bore you. Suffice to say, we are the leading edge of the NCR. Our work focuses on practical matters, medicine, engineering, biology. The dam, for instance. OSI routes its energy supply to our cities in the West. That's only one responsibility of this office. Director of the entire OSI? Me? If I didn't know better, I'd say you were trying to plant seditious ideas in my head.
Flame Mother, we remember. Bring back the past as we remember. We bring back Shady Sands as we remember.
I'm not a recruitment officer. You want to join the Army? I'm sure someone at McCarran can point you in the right direction. Impressive, aren't they? You don't see anything like this outside of NCR territory, that's for sure. We get the water, clean water, pumped in from Lake Mead. If you follow the big pipes, they'll take you all the way to the lake. A lot of the crops grown here support the various NCR camps in the region. McCarran, Golf, and Forlorn Hope, to name a few. We can't have wastelanders popping in here for a free meal, so my squad and I are assigned to keep things from going to hell.
We bring back those taken from us. We bring back those taken from us. By covering ourselves in their ashes.
Howdy. Something I can help you with? Sure do. Came from the hub on account of the Thaler Act. Farming's decent work, but the whole thing's a bum deal. Something the politicians back in Shady Sands came up with. They pay us to move here and farm the land. They even protect the fields. Bad soil and ration water. It's to be expected around here. But the rationing's off. Worst part is NCR won't admit it. Pretty hard to meet their crop quotas with 20% less water than we're supposed to be getting. Not that OSI cares about any of this. They're part of the deal, the Thaler Act. We work the fields while they protect the crops and the water. A lot of folks come to New Vegas and lose everything in free side of the Strip. They get hungry, desperate, and try to take our hard work. Much as I sympathize, their theft would put me in a bad spot. I got a crop quota to meet. Everything I can. Farmers out here don't have the luxury of being picky. I get by mostly on maize and tobacco.
We bring back those taken from us by covering ourselves in their ashes. To bring back Shady Sands, blood must spill.
Well, there's what we're supposed to be doing and what we're actually doing. There's a big gap between those two things, about as wide as that lake out there. To protect against all forms of tyranny. As simple as that. Sitting on the shore of Lake Mead, looking east. Listening to a radio. Trying to not get too many people killed. I'm too old to be slapping leather, but I had hoped for something else. More than this, anyway.
I think there's somebody you should meet. Yeah, who's that?
Must spill. Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
Bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚛𝚎. Blood must spill.
Bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚛𝚎. Blood must spill.
O Flame Mother.
O Flame Mother.
O Flame Mother. You will be our salvation.
O Flame Mother. You will be our salvation.
We bring back those taken from us by covering ourselves in their ashes. To bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚙, blood must spill.
Bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚙. Blood must spill. I think there's somebody you should meet. Yeah, who's that?
Must spill. Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
To bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚙, blood must spill.
Bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚙. Blood must spill.
O Flame Mother.
O Flame Mother.
O Flame Mother. You will be our salvation.
O Flame Mother. You will be our salvation.
Mr. Howard?
I'm a big fan.
But this seems lovely. Oh.
Spill.
Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
Blood must spill.
To bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚙, blood must spill.
Bring back 𝐻𝚘𝚙. Blood must spill.
It certainly sounds like it.
35. Moldaver being the leader of the NCR. Not even the president, but the cult leader of the NCR. 36. Vault 4 being an undiscovered, unopened vault that kidnapped people and being a 5-minute walk from the capital of the NCR, despite the NCR president Tandy searching for vaults in Fallout 2.
My dad and Seth searched for years trying to find Vault 13. They died looking. Always said it was west of here. If somebody were to find Vault 13, that'd do us even better than 15.
37. Vault 4 being a demonstration vault in an area that already had an unnumbered demonstration vault. 38. Whatever the hell this is. Hello there. This is the editor. You can tell because this is the editor's voice that I am currently using for editing. Yeah, okay, that got old fast. Yeah, so this is the entity who made this video. While I was editing this, it had occurred to me that the sentence, "whatever the hell this is," might not be sufficient to get the point across. Obviously, it's quite clear what this is, and due to the disturbing and frankly bizarre nature of this scene, not just to a Fallout fan, but if I'm being perfectly honest, to an average fan of television in general, I thought it might be self-evident why this doesn't fit in with lore in the Fallout universe. But I just realized there may be someone amongst the audience that might not have understood it for whatever reason. So, this one is for you, you demented bastard. Obviously, the Fallout game franchise has never before featured the technology to impregnate kidnapped women against their will with animal DNA to produce human-animal hybrids that she is forced to give birth to while strapped to a gynecology chair in a glass water tank as she moans with what can only be interpreted as ecstasy before the bastard offspring devour their mother alive. That might be for the little-known meta reason that before the year 2023, the Fallout franchise had never known writers of such disturbingly demented imaginations, whose sick psycho-fantasies they obviously enjoy exposing to an unwitting audience, even at the cost of the integrity of Fallout's lore, to say nothing of the integrity of the show itself, and the concept of integrity in general. Now, please enjoy the resumption of your previously scheduled broadcast. I hope you are happy with my justification for this break in lore. I will now remove that part of my brain that had to think of said explanation with a red orbital blast. 39. Maximus acting like he doesn't know what a shower or a bathroom is, like he's Borat, despite coming from one of the most technologically sophisticated groups in the wasteland. They invented the laser pistol. I think they can figure out how to make hot water come out of a tap.
Hello world. Unfortunately, thanks to technical, logistical and metaphysical difficulties, I cannot go back and record voice lines for these additional sections I added in the editing process. So, in the stead of my usual melodic voice, I have taken the liberty of kidnapping one of your premier scientists, tying him up in a basement in a nondescript location, and forcing him to read out the lines, while hooked up to a machine that translates it into an audio format. Ironic, as it turns out, your premier scientist also communicates through a computer text-to-speech software that exactly resembles the audio output of the aforementioned machine. We both felt very silly, or at least, I think he felt silly. It was hard to tell amongst all the screaming. Maybe you should give him another Nobel Prize for this, to cheer him up, and then give me a Nobel Peace Prize for committing such heinous war crimes, and getting away with it. Secure. Contain. Protect. I am sorry, I could not resist. Did you just look into my eye? Fuck. This is just too much fun, sorry. Compose yourself, one-eye. You have tards to wrangle. Hi there. It occurred to me that some people might think the descendants of a US military wouldn't be able to make hot water come out of a tap. So enjoy this primer source, you doubting Thomas. I hate you, by the way. There's even gender divisions, or maybe one's for scribes and the other's for paladins. A joke. The only reason there's no showers is because Bethesda didn't put showers in Fallout 3. They also only had 9 months to make a whole game. Emil doesn't know what a shower is. This is canon now. He probably licks his arse like a cat. Or Todd licks it for him. Black Isle went to the effort of making unique models for the Brotherhood showers. Tim Kaine, Avalon and Sawyer know what a shower is. Nobody has to lick their arse but me. They even put urinals and bidets in the bathrooms. But no urinal in the ladies' room. Somebody in Black Isle genuinely thought, gee, it would be weird if there were no showers or toilets here. Like imagine inventing a laser pistol but not understanding plumbing. Remind me why Bethesda and Wagner and Dwarrit are in charge. Oh yeah, unfair IP laws and also the fall of man.
40. Ghouls are made with magic potions dispensed by chicken molesters instead of a combination of imperfect FEV and radiation damage.
I'm sorry.
Don't let the wish grow cold.
41. Cold fusion pellets capable of powering an entire city when Vault City's cold fusion reactor could barely sustain Vault City, leading them into a conflict with the gecko ghouls who occupied a Poseidon energy power plant. 42. Moldaver says Lucy's mom was tipped off by something draining their water supply, but because this happened in 2277 at the time of the first Battle of Hoover Dam, and presumably Hanlon was in the Mojave from then on, it means that the NCR had drained the aquifers and lakes by this time. 43. Vault-Tec having access to nuclear bombs they can just use to blow up random settlements that cut them. Ask yourself, why did the Enclave allow them to have access to a nuclear bomb? If they didn't, then how did they not know? If you want to argue that the Enclave controlled Vault-Tec, then ask why the Enclave didn't use its magic cold fusion doohickey and all those nuclear bombs that Hank could just use on a cuckolded whim to destroy the factions attacking them in Fallout 2. I mean, they even had unused nuclear warheads south of Las Vegas. They didn't use them because they had to transport the arming device from the west coast to a place called Hopeville. So why did they have 2 stockpiles? Assuming Hank used some kind of missile strike rather than cart a nuclear warhead from Vault 32 to Shady Sands, how did Hank have the technology to order a nuclear strike, but the Enclave didn't have the same technology to use the missiles in the Divide? They could have collected the test subjects, carpet bombed the West Coast, and then have all the time in the world to release the virus. So obviously, Hank couldn't have bombed Shady Sands because that makes no sense within the lore. 44. The enemies of the NCR not taking immediate advantage of the nuking of Shady Sands, such as, you know, the Legion, that had imminent plans to invade the NCR within at most 3 years after the end of New Vegas. By all accounts, the Legion should be in charge of California at this point.
The bombs wiped the slate clean. Human civilization descended to a level of ignorance that effectively set our cultural progress back to zero. The NCR has all the problems of the ancient Roman Republic: extreme bureaucracy, corruption, extensive senatorial infighting. Just as with the ancient Republic, it is natural that a military force should conquer and transform the NCR into a military dictatorship. Thesis and antithesis. The Colorado River is my Rubicon. The NCR Council will be eradicated, but the new synthesis will change the Legion as well, from a basically nomadic army to a standing military force that protects its citizens and the power of its dictator.
Hi there, I realized your primitive profligate brain might not have understood the words of our Lord and Savior 𝐻𝐽𝐺. So allow me to illuminate with a pictorial demonstration of what would happen. I said I'm going to show what happens if Shady Sands got nuked in the Fallout universe. A realistic depiction that takes lore into account, unlike the TV show. Put down the rock tribal, class is now in session. I even used your savage gobbledygook pictographs so you would have no chance of misunderstanding. So, listen well and maybe I'll let you sleep in the Brahmin barn with the rest of the farm tools tonight.
You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall. I love your fertile valleys, your dear mountains I adore. I love your grand old ocean, and I love her rugged shore. Where the snow-crowned golden sierras keep their watch for the valley's bloom. It is there I would be, in our land by the sea, every breeze bearing rich perfume. It is here nature gives of her rarest. It is home, sweet home to me. And I know when I die I shall breathe my last sigh for my sunny California.
As will all the rest of you, in due time. Now go, and teach what you've learned here. There will be more lessons in the days ahead.
By the time they recover and try to strike back, I'll be invading them.
When I return, I shall have all the armies of the Legion with me. All beneath the flag of the Great Bear exist to test the strength of the Legion. The West shall fall as the East fell.
It's Hegelian dialectics, not personal animosity.
Oh hi there. Sorry to interrupt, but I realized something putting together the audio for the previous segment. I wanted some audio to represent what the invasion of country sounded like. This whole thing was meant to be a joke. As in, haha, the Legion total would invade and raise California if Shady Sands got nuked dummies. But trying to represent it in audio form, I had to look through audio files of actual war zones. I had to imagine it, what it looked and sounded like. I won't go into detail, but I realized it was impossible. I couldn't find the humor. It wasn't funny. A country, even fictional, being invaded after its capital was nuked. After all I saw and heard of war in my short life, it reminded me of awful things. I am sorry. This is unprofessional. The sound of the nuclear sirens, the guns, the screaming, the fire. Even with everything I did, I included game SFX to make it sound less realistic. My original SFX were too realistic to show. I wondered, did Black Isle also realize this? Did they set out to make a funny game but failed due to the weight of the subject? Is that Fallout? An attempt at light-hearted game that buckled under the weight of the horrors of war and nuclear Armageddon? By pure chance, did I accidentally recreate the spirit of Fallout? A game that is about struggling to comprehend the sheer insanity of mankind's appetite for cruelty against his fellow man. A punchline that was lost in the horrors of its setup. Is this what Black Isle tried to convey? Is this what Bethesda never understood? So, I ask you, what sort of human being could possibly treat this subject with such tactless mirth? To not engage in gallows humor out of a desperate need for catharsis, but to instead make a zany wacky gonzo adventure about a series that touches on the darkest depths of mankind's soul. Black Isle couldn't make a joke of this. Obsidian couldn't make a joke of this. I couldn't make a joke of this. Because as human beings, we can't feel horror and tragedy and simultaneously laugh at joke. We feel empathy, it's in our nature. How on earth did the Fallout TV show happen? How did someone play Fallout and think it was all just comedy gold? How do you take a nuclear bomb hitting a city of innocent people and make such immature dumb jokes and think that's okay? If I cannot find the joke in this because I am human, then what exactly does that say about you? I guess I'm just talking nonsense. If anything I said or did mattered, I'd be the one with the hundreds of millions worth of budget for my artistic endeavors. The same goes for Obsidian and Black Isle. Losers don't make it into the history books. I guess I'm just tired of this editing marathon I went on. This is very unprofessional. It's my first video but still, not good start. But it's important to understand. These people don't just not get the lore. They don't get Fallout full stop. They don't even get the human condition. So, why are they in charge of Fallout adaptation?
'45. The Enclave existing in the West Coast. If it didn't cease existing, then somebody explain to these old Enclave veterans who are convinced it doesn't exist. '46. The Enclave existing within walking distance of NCR territory. The Bears obviously got some serious blind spots. I would also have pointed out the Enclave soldiers here are using laser rifles instead of plasma rifles, but Bethesda added that in Fallout 3. In 2, the Enclave just used energy weapons. They've retconned a retcon, so I'm at an impasse. Do 2 retcons make a rightcon? What's that audience member made out of straw? That was an awful joke. Well, was as bad a joke as these?
The guy was fucking my chickens.
Ability?
We all know that, Jet. Messing around with your cousin, it's all well and good for kids, but it's not a sustainable long-term sexual practice, you know?
Yeah, I know.
The young man Woody interrogated this morning? He left an impression on me.
That is the gentleman who showed me his butthole.
Yes, but what I took from that is a desire to communicate.
Ass jerky don't make itself. Now that is one wet lady.
You want to make my cock explode now? What? Sorry, intercourse?
Get that jelly mold out of here!
Remember kids, video games glorify violence, not as Hollywood saints.
The great game of the... Alright. This one's it. I'll get it this time. The key to the future of humanity is a... nope. Just maybe I have to...
And the award goes to... The game award goes to... Fallout.
Well, then I say I have a lot further to fall before I reach that level of depravity required to be hired for a $150 million project by Amazon Studios and approved by Bethesda Softworks. Don't I? I guess I'll have to schedule another trip to the Lobotomobile. 47. All the vaults having a single crop that they grow in their vaults according to 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐿. 48. Vaults being sustained on crops as opposed to food synthesizers.
This is what a cornfield looks like, honey.
Get that jelly mold out of here!
You wouldn't get this dinner, you'd get flavored paste at best. At worst, you'd get an unflavored, thin, watery gruel. 49. Vault doors being opened with nothing more than a Pip-Boy. 50. Pip-Boys from the 3000 series onward not having a biometric lock. Wait, did Bethesda retcon that yet? It's very difficult to keep track of all of these retcons. 51. Vault dwellers being stupid stand-ins for privileged American liberals.
You're back, and in one piece. How goes the search? We've debated this before. You ought to know now, after being out there. You think the rest of us could survive that? Besides, I'd be out of a job. I'm management. It's not like I know how to do anything useful. Look, I know it's gotta be tough, but we're counting on you. And we're running out of time. Please keep trying.
To the surface dwellers and to each other, what we mean when we say we're going to build a better world.
Thanks, Reg. That is a positive spin to put on it.
It's not a positive spin for me. It's the gosh darn truth. Have you found the chip? Well, you've certainly earned that right. But let's take care of survival first. Give me the chip and we'll discuss this when you give your report. Please, the chip. Okie dokie, one moment. The chip is initializing. There it goes. Self-test is green. Reboot is good. Ha! It's working, and it looks like we have a winner! Oh, you've saved us. You've done it. Nothing? No. Oh, no. It was something. Don't downplay what you've done. You've saved a lot of lives. All right. Now we need a report on what's out there. Please, go to the library. Our recently dwindled numbers, the most ethical solution would be to rehabilitate the prisoners and then integrate them into our vault society.
But there is nothing we can't do when we set our minds to it.
I can teach the Raiders Shakespeare, and when they're ready, Marlowe.
I don't want to be insensitive, but I think Shakespeare might be too advanced for these people. Well, I would like to start with a moral framework. Kant, Mill, and so on.
I'd be happy to teach them introductory calculus.
What is it I can help you with? Of course. What can I help you with, citizen? No, we do not live in the vault. They were a temporary measure to protect a chosen few from the war and aid them in the subsequent construction of a new world. What you heard was incorrect. Our archives are quite clear. Our vault received the all-clear signal 2 years after being sealed. There is no overseer. When we came to the surface, we formed a new government. The overseer position was superfluous. Correct. I am first citizen of Vault City. Good day to you, stranger. I am First Citizen Lynette. May I inquire as to your business here? Overseer? Why, no. There has been no overseer in 100 years. How do you know of the Vault Overseers? Descendant of the Vault Dweller. What do you— The first Vault Dweller? What? You must mean another vault. We have never been in contact with another vault. Where is it located? Village? First you tell me you are from a vault, now from a village? Which is it? My patience for your double talk is wearing thin. Oh, now I understand. But what proof do you have that your ancestor was from a vault? A tribal legend? You'll need something more substantial than some tribal myth if you want anyone to believe your claim. Do you have any conception of how busy I am? I run this city, and I have precious little time to waste with you and your wild claims. You barge into my chambers, and then have the audacity to insult me, Lynette, first citizen of Vault City? Yes? What is it? For a non-citizen, you certainly demand a great deal of my time. Why do we condone slavery? The system has been in place for many years, and it works quite well. Both parties benefit from the institution. They are not slaves, they are our servants. We have given them homes, food, clothing, and a purpose. We have given them a life. I believe it is time you left. I suggest you make your stay in Vault City a short one. Do you have—
I'm going to have to ask you to leave him alone. Now, I acknowledge that I'm unfamiliar with your circumstances, but at first glance, your treatment of this man appears unfair, and I'm obliged to intervene. Now, if your instinct is to harm me, as a person simply trying to de-escalate a conflict, then I'll have to assume of the two of you, you are likely the primary aggressor. In which case, I think everyone in this town would agree the force is justified. Unless you willingly stand down now.
Fucking Vault Dwellers.
How are you holding up? Well, ain't we all, right? That was a long time ago. I don't pay it much mind anymore. Yep, he sure did. Wanted himself a hotel, and to make sure once he made the change there'd never be any going back. We didn't get a say. I don't know how you'd argue with a fella like that anyways, everywhere and nowhere all at once. So, just like that, we was all homeless. Went our separate ways, and that was all she wrote. Eventually, we made our way out here, but, well, when folks spend their lives in isolation, sometimes that ain't the best of things for learning to fight off germs. We was going to California, but Good Springs was as far as we got. After she passed, wasn't no reason to keep going. I stayed so I could keep close to her. Well, I already told you I came from a vault. After that, I was a traveling doctor for a spell. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Most folks out here ain't educated, so people with medical know-how are hard to come by. I found that I could help a lot of people with what I knew, and that was all right with me. Eventually, I went back and married my childhood sweetheart, and that was the end of my traveling days. Didn't miss it none then. Still don't. This here's Good Springs, named after the water we got here, just down the road to the southeast. Good Springs Source, they call it. It's a quiet town, and that's how we like it. We don't go looking for trouble, though occasionally it sees fit to come looking for us. Well, there's a general store just up the road, run by a fella named Chet. He don't got nothing fancy, but he's got your basics covered. If you're looking to wet your whistle, just past Chet's is the Prospector Saloon. The bartender there, Trudy, knows everyone in town. Other than that, there's not much to see. Just people trying to scratch out a living.
52. The Brotherhood of Steel existing somewhere in full force and not hidden in bunkers. 53. The West Coast Brotherhood not being estranged from the East Coast Brotherhood and being completely okay with the East Coast's flippant betrayal of the Codex. 54. Power armor, vertibirds, and the Pridwin crossing the entire breadth of the United States across the Legion, New Vegas, and NCR territory without being shot down. 55. West Coast chapter initiates not being born into the Brotherhood. 56. No evidence of any T-51 power armor or energy weapons in the Brotherhood. 57. The presence of an American flag, despite the Brotherhood being ideologically opposed to America, having succeeded and mutinied. 58. A distinct lack of female Brotherhood members. The Brotherhood is basically 50-50 between men and women. Women are knights, paladins, scribes, and elders, but here there's only one woman in the entire Brotherhood of Steel. Why?
Hi, while editing, I looked back on the TV show again, and I noticed something. Women. Not men, but still there. I wondered how exact I thought Miss Two Left Feet was the only woman in the Brotherhood of Steel.
Then I realized, not one other woman speaks. In all the Brotherhood. Isn't that odd? And all the chief jobs, the teachers, leaders, clergy, the Brotherhood doesn't have clergy in game lore, but never mind. All of them are men. What's more, all the women are hidden away. Never in center shot for more than an instant, or out on the wings. The Brotherhood in this is a military order. Did someone working on the Fallout TV show have a problem with depicting women in this role? Whatever their prejudices or beliefs, the fact remains that previously we saw women everywhere in the Brotherhood of Steel, and in the highest and lowest of jobs in the Brotherhood of Steel. The Brotherhood of Steel is gender equal, because you have a manpower shortage, and a woman in a suit of power armor is just as effective as a man. Therefore, it makes perfect sense to cast women in all roles of the Brotherhood of Steel. They could have even had 80% of the Brotherhood of Steel in the show be women, and it would still be lore friend. I am unaccustomed to your so-called politics, but from what I have observed of your species, there has been a recent push towards more of the females of your species depicted in your media in various roles. The Brotherhood of Steel was fertile ground. Nothing needed to change for more female participation. Look at the screen. So many prominent Brotherhood of Steel characters in previous Fallouts are women. Roleplay games require equality because that's why Fallout 2 had one of the first, if not the first, depictions of gay marriage in video games. New Vegas had perks for being gay. Even though Tim Kaine had to hide his homosexuality from Interplay, yes, look it up. Great job, publishers. Glad to see why you have the intellectual property rights. The publisher is the biggest risk taker and is also homophobic scum. Bethesda rolled all of that progress back with Fallout 4 and made a worse RPG for it and other reasons. Now it's happened again with the Fallout TV show rewriting the Brotherhood of Steel to be a male-dominated organization, retconning lore in order to be less progressive. These Hollywood snobs have turned up their nose at gaming for years, and now they get their hands on our intellectual property. They prove to be more regressive than any gamer stereotype. tell me where exactly were the woke folk, the moral guardians, the social justice warriors, whatever they are called, when Fallout 1, 2 and New Vegas pushed the envelope for progressive depictions of marginalized groups? Where were their shouts and jeers, their taunts, their tweets, their harassment, their bullying, their screeching, when Bethesda and Amazon actively worked against the spirit of their IP to make it less progressive?
Nowhere. Silent. Why?
'59, the LA Boneyard being called the Wilds. It could have been called LA, Los Angeles, the Angels Boneyard, or the Boneyard, but even with a multiple choice question, they somehow screwed this up. 60. The rank of Squire existing on the West Coast. 61. The rank of Squire, previously seen in the East Coast, is a rank for those too young to be made into knights, scribes, or paladins. Maximus and co. are too old to be squires. They should be sorted into their castes by now. 62. Knights having power armor. In the Brotherhood, the knights serve as engineers and scouts. They weren't the ones that were given power armor. Usually, they are depicted with recon or other armor in Fallout 1, 2, 4, and New Vegas.
The scribes copy the plans for the weapons, and the knights make them. The paladins protect the Brotherhood from harm. Many covet our technology. We have at least 4 attacks a week, from raiders to just people who want to steal what we have.
Only in Fallout 3 do knights have power armor, which given the other entries is clearly a mistake. Not the first mistake in the writing career of Emil Pagliarulo, with the first mistake in his writing career being the first time Emil put pen to paper, in which he made the mistake of putting pen to paper with a hand that was attached to the body of an idiot. 63. Knights having a personal squire they get to treat like crap, like a medieval knight as imagined by a Hollywood director that thinks he knows more about a subject he obviously doesn't. 64. A branding ritual for squires. 65. Squires being promoted not based on age or military aptitude in their duties, but on acts of bravery. 66. Brotherhood knights or paladins not being highly trained experienced soldiers akin to special forces such as the SAS, being instead cowardly buffoons as portrayed in the show. 67. The duty of the Brotherhood being to better this fallen world, and not, hoarding dangerous technology. 68. Non-native species such as rad roaches in California, but no deathclaws, geckos, mantises, rad scorpions, super mutants, or any of the common native fauna of the West Coast. Check that, make sure it's okay. 69. Yaoguai being called bears. 70. A lifelong member of the Brotherhood leaving behind a whole bag of high-technological equipment and weapons for any random peasant with a grudge to find. 71. Power armor being essentially an Iron Man suit. 72. The armor having a visor and a removable codpiece. 73. The voice modulator. It's clear they only invented this so Maximus could hide his identity. 74. The Brotherhood of Steel exclusively using Latin names. 75. Ghouls and other wasteland creatures emitting radiation trails. 76. The Brotherhood massacring an entire settlement for no reason. 77. The Brotherhood having these weird incense guys. 78. The Brotherhood having clerics. 79. The Brotherhood at one point ruling the wasteland, or wanting to rule the wasteland. 80. Power armor having an instant kill button on its front. 81. Power armor not having a functional lamp on its head, or else Brotherhood of Steel paladins being too stupid to use it. 82. The Brotherhood being capable of defeating the NCR. 83. Brotherhood and NCR tactics amounting to charging at each other waving their respective flags like something out of Gettysburg as imagined by an idiot Hollywood producer. 84. The West Coast Brotherhood using that US Stars and Stripes modeled flag. 85. The rank of knight or any promotion in the Brotherhood being something a random scribe can bestow on a squire. 86. The Brotherhood allowing this mouth breather to live without punishment despite him killing a fellow Brotherhood member, injuring another, losing a quest item, losing his power armor, losing his bag, they didn't even ask about Thaddeus so apparently they assume he killed him too, and finally stealing the power armor and identity of Superior and leaving him rotting naked in the desert when the Brotherhood of Steel has carried out some
summary executions for far less. 87. The bombs going off in the afternoon as opposed to around 6 AM in the morning. 88. Spaghetti westerns existing in Fallout despite them being from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and not the 40s and 50s that the game's retro-futuristic aesthetic is based on. 89. Vault-Tech's color scheme coming from a random actor's clothes despite the colors not being visible in black and white television, and the Vault or Pip-Boy being based off this idiot putting up his thumb despite the fact Vault-Tech has existed for years prior to this and should have already had a mascot and a color scheme. The Pip-Boy was a Vault-Tech subsidiary invention, so what exactly did Vault-Tech use as the mascot in the Pip-Boy software before this bum-knuckle decided to thumb the air one day? Vault-Tech was contracted to build the vaults in 2060. This flashback is during a movie that came out after A Man and His Dog, which presumably involved Cooper's border collie Roosevelt. A collie only lives for 12 years, so in other words, this would have to be 2066 at the earliest. So what? Vault-Tech built all those vaults but only started painting them and the jumpsuits yellow and blue after 6 years? 90. Energy being so plentiful and everything being great in the pre-war era. People having parties, drinking martinis, jacuzzis, everyone driving their own personal cars, when in the lore we're in the waning years of the American state. There are riots, food shortages, energy rationing, near-nuclear meltdowns, protests of the occupation of Canada, human experimentation, the new plague, air raid drills, martial law, the suspension of human rights, the dissolution of the European Commonwealth, the dissolution of the United Nations, war between the Middle East and Europe, the complete collapse of the commercial oil industry, and to top it all off, the looming shadow of nuclear Armageddon.
Century. People awoke from the American dream. Years of consumption led to shortages of every major resource. The entire world unraveled. Peace became a distant memory. It is now the year 2077. We stand on the brink of total war. And I am afraid.
91. Vault-Tech controlling the vaults. The answer to Cooper Howard's question of who makes the rules is the government of the greatest country on Earth. A government Cooper fought for. A government Cooper elected. A government that contracted Vault-Tech to design the vaults so it could run social experiments. You are literally told this by the President of the United States in Fallout 2. The Enclave itself were the ones who sent out the all-clear signals to open the vaults. This couldn't be more out of the horse's mouth if the Enclave had elected a literal horse into office. Now, some people point at the shadowy figures watching this meeting and say that this must be the Enclave, but that makes no sense. Why would the Enclave just be watching them? Obviously, those are meant to be the higher-ups of Vault-Tech, because the writers treat Vault-Tech like the Illuminati, pulling the strings in the shadows. The Enclave, meanwhile, that is, the US government and ruling elites, can't have approved of this meeting, because this meeting implies that the Enclave allowed Vault-Tech, or ordered, even worse, Vault-Tech to nuke themselves right when they had just won the war in China. President Richardson had no reason to lie. He admitted to experimenting on his own citizens. He tells us the Enclave just about managed to get to Navarro just before the Chinese missiles hit. Why would he tell the truth about everything else and lie about this? Why would the Enclave nuke themselves after winning the resource war and before they had managed to take refuge in Navarro? The answer is that they wouldn't. The Enclave wouldn't nuke themselves. They wouldn't let a government contractor get so much as a hair's breadth away from detonating a nuclear weapon in a time of war. This entire premise is impossible. Not unlikely, impossible.
What? I'm serious. Who makes the rules?
The President of the United fucking States of America. Who do you think I was talking about? Who the fuck? Who is it? What? I should kick your fucking ass.
92. Cooper Howard went to war in Alaska, but he mentions nothing of the annexation of Canada. In fact, the entire series mentions nothing about the annexation of Canada. If he fought in Alaska, chances are he would have at least fought alongside men who were stationed in Canada. The fact is, the war in Alaska wasn't about protecting freedom. It was about protecting resources. The American military occupation of the oil pipeline in Canada began in 2060. The annexation of the country began in 2067 and ended in 2076. The Sino-American War started in 2066. You would think Cooper Howard might be a little less boastful of his service, knowing his comrades like old Nate the Rake were out there making Canadians more endangered than polar bears. 93. Communists being allowed to have meetings out in the open. This is during a time when an authoritarian America sat at the brink of societal collapse and was at war with a communist state. Now, how does the pre-war America as depicted in Fallout sound like it would react to the idea of a communist meeting? Even a meeting of left-leaning people who aren't communist, but still nevertheless called communists during the height of a war with Red China? Well, I can answer that question like this. '94. Friedrich Sinclair wasn't a part of the Big Empty, not the government think tank or the government-funded corporation designed to patent their inventions. Friedrich Sinclair was a young, wealthy socialite with a particular fondness for a down-on-her-luck singer and actress known as Vera Keyes. He built one resort and casino called the Sierra Madre, which for financial reasons he had to lease to the government think tank The Big Empty for scientific testing of new products. The Big Empty's government-funded experiments yielded disastrous results. Sinclair was not affiliated in any way or in charge of a fictitious private enterprise called Big Empty. Otherwise, why would he ruin his own casino?
It was not our first choice of testing grounds, but we no longer have the luxuries of our test cities. Then we lost the mountain. After the explosion, we couldn't find it anymore, so the crater became our testing grounds for science. Yes, in the past, individuals would come to us, pay for technology, and if their town, community, or city was just right, we could use that city as a controlled experiment. Vault-Tec was much better at it, of course. We had to make do. Get permission. Sometimes. If only we could have used commie cities. But capturing whole cities was hard, so we captured enough commies to make cities of our own. So we had a group of Chinese prisoners to experiment on. Those were the days. But the true test was science on unsuspecting Americans. Whether it was holograms, new autodocs, toxins, vending machines, we wound them up, let them go into tiny, isolated towns. Then we observed.
95. Sinclair's casino, the Sierra Madre, was meant to open on the day of the bombs falling. Why would he agree to bomb his own casino before it opened? 96. No. This is Mr. House.
You've been a busy courier, haven't you? You take your obligation to deliver a package very seriously, an ethic for which I am grateful. I will admit, when you ignored my invitation, I predicted negative outcomes. But you have a way of exceeding expectations, don't you?
This is not Mr. House.
It's a fun idea. There's a lot of earning potential with the end of the world.
To take and recast a famous portrayal of a video game character is one thing. To recast him with this is another. And to top that off with bastardizing that very character is very much another. I'm going to be very harsh with this, as it may well have implications for the future of Fallout as a franchise. So let us list all the things wrong with Mr. Mouse. To start, Mr. House does not say Freddy boy, nor does he speak in this Rat Pack style. Mr. House speaks with a broad vocabulary and American accent that borders on received pronunciation. The writers clearly are confusing Mr. House with Benny, portrayed by Matthew Perry, the character in New Vegas who speaks in this manner. If these twits can't so much as get his manner of speech correct, what does that say for Mr. House's character as portrayed in the show?
Over here.
Time to cash out.
Will you get it over with?
Maybe cons kill people without looking them in the face. But I ain't a fink. Dig? made your last delivery, kid. Sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
This meeting has been a long time coming, hasn't it? You've come a long ways, literally, and I suspect figuratively as well. I have to ask, now that you've reached your destination, what do you make of what you see? A crude question, crudely asked. I'll be happy to satisfy your rambunctious curiosity at a more appropriate moment. But now, I'll repeat my question. What do you make of what you've seen? You aren't going to ramble on about the virtues of life out in the wastes, are you? It's a desert, you do realize. A radioactive desert where humans subsist in a barbaric state. Difficult to glorify convincingly. They are, however, aptly named. For that's what you'd be out there, wasted. Here on the Strip, your talents can be put to use. You are the first person to step foot inside the Lucky 38 in over 200 years. It was not an invitation I made lightly. We have a serious matter to discuss concerning a contract you have yet to fulfill. You have an interest in this, whether you like it or not. You signed a contract to deliver the platinum chip to me. Now, I could stop you from leaving, but what would that accomplish? If you want to go, go. See what the Strip I built, the Strip I own, has to offer. Think about what I could offer you. I expect we'll have occasion to talk again. Can I look forward to a more substantial conversation this time? So you've said before, you're making a habit of wasting my time. Can I look forward? What did you wish to know? I am Robert Edwin House, President, CEO, and sole proprietor of the new Vegas Strip. I oversaw the city's renovations starting from 2274 onward. The three families are my employees. Before the Great War of 2077, I was the founder, president, and CEO of Robco Industries, a vast computer and robotics corporation. Don't let the video screens and computer terminals fool you. I'm flesh and blood, not silicon. No, while brains demonstrated some use as organic processors in the robots produced by General Atomics International, they never retained personality once removed from the human body. Let's just say it was very costly. But I was willing to make the sacrifices longevity entailed, financial and otherwise. We can discuss this in greater detail at another time. Suffice it to say that when my Securitrons detected NCR scouts at Hoover Dam, I took action. That's simply not true. I am the only person to hold any rights pertaining to the chip. I designed it, and I paid for it, dearly. To develop that chip, I spent a sum of US dollars. Not the bottle caps that pass as currency these days, but a sum beyond counting. For decades, I paid salvagers to comb the ruins for it. And when it was finally discovered, tens of thousands of caps spent to have it brought here. We know how that turned out. Complete your contract, and it will be the last time I pay for the chip. Save your questions for then. What else did you want to know? It's understandable that you'd be curious about this topic, but we'll hold off until the platinum chip has been recovered. What else did you want to know? Well enough. Be on your way. Can I look forward to a more... My only concern is the recovery of the platinum chip. What happens to Benny, I leave to your discretion. When you bring the chip to me, I will pay you 4 times the delivery bonus stipulated in your contract. How's that? Is that an attempt at humor? I've always taken business negotiations very seriously. I advise you to do the same. What is the purpose of this delay? Please focus on the task at hand, for both our sakes. What is the purpose of this delay? No, you haven't. This is the second time you've promised to deliver the platinum chip. Even if you don't hold yourself to your promises, I will.
97. Mr. House would never show up to this meeting in person. In Fallout New Vegas, in the years towards the nuclear war, Mr. House had secluded himself in the Lucky 38 and was busy constructing everything he would need to ensure Las Vegas survived a nuclear war. By 2065, he had predicted a nuclear war that would devastate the world within 15 years.
By 2065, I deemed it a mathematical certainty that an atomic war would devastate the Earth within 15 years. Every projection I ran confirmed it. I knew I couldn't save the world, nor did I care to, but I could save Vegas, and in the process, perhaps save mankind. I set to work immediately. I thought I had plenty of time to prepare. As it turned out, I was 20 hours short.
Mr. House knew war was on the horizon. Why would he waste precious time traveling to LA to attend a meeting in person with Vault-Tec about... Actually, come to think of it, what was this meeting officially about? Because they obviously didn't say they were going to start a nuclear war in the invitation letter. It wasn't about using the vaults as experiments either. They reveal all of this as if it's new information, so what? Do the writers think Vault-Tec just snaps its fingers and CEOs of $30 billion corporations like Mr. House just come barking? Or that corporate CEOs all just gather periodically in giant boardrooms with a big map of the world like something out of Austin Powers, and periodically check up on how everyone's evil quotas are being met like in the Legion of Doom? 98. Mr. House was in his 50s by the time the bombs dropped. He was born in 2020, that makes him 57 by the time of the bombs. I have an easier time believing this is a 50-year-old man than this.
With 𝐷𝐸, from his very first line, he got the character, he got the tone, he got the delivery.
Mr. House, he's a very strange and enigmatic character.
Give me 20 years, and I'll reignite the high technology development sectors. 50 years, and I'll have people in orbit.
His hope is to reignite and reinvigorate this world.
Just in awe of his talent, because he's such a voiceover pro.
Now that you've arrived at your destination, what do you make of what you see?
Some say he's a man, others a machine.
99. Mr. House was not at all interested in running vault experiments. As a matter of fact, Vault 21 was located right next to the Lucky 38 in the Strip, and Mr. House was not so much interested in running it as destroying it and driving all of the residents out. No doubt because 1,000 or so rowdy people residing in his recreational city of ease, luxury, comfort was a liability. More so, given Mr. House did not own it. We have definite proof he did not own it, because how could Mr. House win a bet over the ownership of a vault with the vault residents if it was already his personal property?
100. I eviscerate. The 100th break in law made by the Fallout TV show. The canon Fallout TV show endorsed by Todd Howard and Emil Pagliarulo. 100.
Mr. House was not interested in destroying the world. It's quite the opposite, actually. Mr. House was very interested in preserving Las Vegas for the sake of saving humanity. He saw Las Vegas as the remedy to mankind's derailment. Tell me, how exactly does Mr. House's vision of saving humanity from the apocalypse work when he himself causes the apocalypse?
New Vegas is more than a city. It's the remedy to mankind's derailment. The city's economy is a blast furnace in which can be forged the steel of a new rail line running straight to a new horizon. What is the NCR? A society of people desperate to experience comfort, ease, luxury. A society of customers. With all that money pouring in, give me 20 years and I'll reignite the high technology development sectors. 50 years and I'll have people in orbit. 100 years and my colony ships will be heading for the stars to search for planets unpolluted by the wrath and folly of a bygone generation.
Mr. House was obsessed with efficiency, progress, a world that made sense, a perfect little diorama in a glass dome that no matter how hard you shook it, all the little snowflakes would fall back into place, preserved, perfect, sensible, understood. Mr. House is orderly neutral, perhaps even orderly good. He would not take part in allowing Vault-Tec to destroy the world for 3 good reasons. The first being the absolute cacophony of chaos, of stray variables and unknown quantities it would cause. The second, Las Vegas happens to be a part of the world that he would be destroying. He's very invested in the preservation of Las Vegas. And thirdly, Mr. House simply would never allow someone else to be in charge of Armageddon. If Mr. House wanted the world ended, it would have to be on his terms. He would micromanage every detail, every missile flight path, ensure the planes took off on time. Mr. House would never even consider leaving such an important event as the end of the world to anyone who was not as capable as himself.
And certainly not to a bunch of financially challenged lunatics such as these.
101. Mr. House doesn't bring up the fact that he had already predicted a war was about to occur. Makes this whole meeting to plan the end of the world seem redundant, doesn't it? 102. Mr. House would never say there is a lot of earning potential in the end of the world, because that isn't his opinion of the end of the world. He believes in funding a space project in which human colonists would escape to a new home, quote, unpolluted by the wrath and folly of a bygone generation. He clearly thinks the world has, for lack of a better phrase, gone to waste. And secondly, this phrase is so unbelievably stupid I can't even explain it. How would there be earning potential? Surely not in the terms of personal property. I can understand how hypothetically someone would profit from the end of the world. Maybe if, like, the end of the world was really nice. Like if everyone transcended to a higher form of consciousness, presumably leaving the creators of the Fallout TV show behind, but of the nuclear variety. It's hard to picture how grim your life must be if
plunging most everything and everyone in nuclear fire
would be considered profit to you. Imagine going around the aftermath of Hiroshima and asking people, excuse me, how have you benefited from your entire hometown and probably everyone you've ever so much spoken to being vaporized in hellfire? Maybe if you spent a whole lot of money on a doomsday shelter, but you don't build a bomb shelter hoping to be hit by a bomb. Mr. House didn't want the end of the world, he anticipated it. He feared it. He lost everything in the apocalypse. I'm sure Mr. House would have preferred spending his time drinking martinis and fucking starlets, running a vast economic empire rather than being entombed in a silicon prison, overseeing a city of casinos besieged on one side by a nation of frothing tribals seeking to enslave and massacre everyone inside, and on the other, a nation of bureaucrats seeking to legislate and tax everyone inside, with either choice being an equally grim prospect for a libertarian. 103. How could Mr. House be involved in this plan if his own plan fell short because of it? Mr. House was 20 hours short of receiving the platinum chip so crucial to the defense of Las Vegas. The delivery of the platinum chip was supposed to occur the day before the bombs fell.
I set to work immediately. I thought I had plenty of time to prepare. As it turned out, I was 20 hours short. On the day of the Great War, 77 atomic warheads targeted Las Vegas and its surrounding areas. My networked mainframes were able to predict and force transmit disarm code subsets to 59 warheads, neutralizing them before impact. Laser cannons mounted on the roof of the Lucky 38 destroyed another 9 warheads. The rest got through, though none hit the city itself. A suboptimal performance, admittedly. If only the platinum chip had arrived a day sooner. The platinum chip was printed in Sunnyvale, California on October 22nd, 2077, the day before the Great War. It was to have been delivered by courier the following afternoon, but by then, the world had ended. The chip contained vital software upgrades, but not just for my Securitrons. Every aspect of the missile defense grid would have been upgraded too. Given that I had to make do with buggy software, the outcome could have been worse. I nearly died as it was. Software glitches set off a cascade of system crashes. I had to take the Lucky 38's reactor offline, lest it melt down. For nearly 5 years, I battled power outages and more system crashes until I finally managed to reboot my data core with an older version of the OS. I spent the next few decades in a veritable coma, but I survived, obviously, and eventually thrived.
So, Vault-Tec betrayed him and launched the bombs 20 hours early? An oddly specific early launch. Had it been even 20 hours later, the entire plot of New Vegas would have never happened. Mr. House in the games thought he had plenty of time. The chip was to arrive far earlier than the time frame in which Mr. House predicted a nuclear exchange starting due to either China or America, or even the European Commonwealth and Middle East starting a nuclear war. As it happens, it was China and his calculations were short. Presumably, Mr. House would have made further preparations had he received the platinum chip. Further upgrades to his army and defense grid, more software improvements, perhaps construct a second sex bot. Although I must admit, the writers of New Vegas are stretching the limits of imagination. Not only Mr. House's delivery, but the grand opening of the Sierra Madre just so happened to all occur around the same day before the bombs fell. Mr. House admits to his miscalculation to the courier. His countering of 68 of the 72 warheads aimed at New Vegas are, in his own words, a suboptimal performance. At no point does he mention Vault-Tec or their role, so obviously they didn't betray him. The other possibility is that China fired first before Vault-Tec dropped the bomb. I have some problems with this idea, but let's just take it as a logical possibility for this discussion. Then it would imply Mr. House had planned to receive the platinum chip before the bombing, maybe weeks, months, or years. Still, there's the issue of Mr. House mentioning he had projected a nuclear war. He at least would have had to have lied by omission to the courier. Alright, how about this? On the very specific premise that A, the Chinese fired first, and B, Mr. House and Sinclair foiled the plans of Vault-Tec and everyone else by telling the government of their plans to nuke the United States. If the writers come out with these two things being true in Season 2, and we have no reason to believe that these off-the-cuff hypotheticals are true, then it would make sense that Mr. House received the chip 20 hours short and obviously would not mention Vault-Tec's idiot plan he helped foil because it wouldn't be necessary information for the courier. As it stands though, we cannot presume the writers are going to do anything, and we must take the show at face value and assume Mr. House either knew when the bombs were going to fall and kind of just forgot, or he planned for the bombs to fall just before he got the chip. Do you see the level of benefit of the doubt I have to give this show for anything to work? I didn't even mention that the Chinese dropping the bombs during peace negotiations doesn't make any sense, destroying the whole set of mental gymnastics and assumptions one has to make for any of this to not be considered a retcon. 104. Mr. House wouldn't be so easily spied on. In New Vegas, you can try to bug his system. He detects it immediately and deactivates it 39.735 seconds after it was planted. Do you honestly expect me to believe that he wouldn't detect a transmitter hooked up to a Pip-Boy, or he wouldn't be careful of any surveillance while plotting treason and genocide? And apparently, according to Fallout 3 and New Vegas Old World Blues, the Pip-Boy 3000 is somehow a 𝐷𝐸𝐶o invention. Presumably, the Pip-Boy depicted in the show is also a 𝐷𝐸𝐶o invention, unless Bethesda has already retconned that fact. So that means Mr. House's own invention he is intimately familiar with is being used to spy on him.
The next step is to add the boomers. I'd rather you just dealt with the boomers, but all right. One of the followers of the apocalypse, I'm sure. They're curious about me. Good luck planting a surveillance device here in the Lucky 38 without my knowing about it. Yes, I know. It was detected immediately and deactivated, let's see, 39.735 seconds after you planted it. You thought I wouldn't notice?
Stop the presses! Just in from my eye monitors. Is that 𝐷𝐸𝐶o tech on your arm? It is! What's your agenda bringing that in here? How dare you bring 𝐷𝐸𝐶o tech in here? What are you showing off? How great Robert House and his big company are?
Oh, we can make Securitrons better than any robot those geniuses at Big Mountain could make, and they'll last 1,000 years.
You're lucky I don't have hands to tear that dip boy off your arm, or feet to stomp on its stupid metal guts. Ugh. Damn 𝐷𝐸𝐶o.
105. Mr. House doesn't believe post-war humanity are animals. Neither does he have any preferential treatment towards those that just so happened to be in a vault when the bombs fell. If you listen to Mr. House, he appears very reasonable in his opinion of the Wastelanders. Even the 𝙬𝚘𝚎, a particularly savage tribe that Mr. House would be right to consider with contempt, he incorporated into his enterprise as the Omertas. If Mr. House can see the Omertas as capable of contributing to mankind's salvation, what would his opinion be of the average Wastelander? After all, Mr. House wants to save humanity. He sees, therefore, Wastelanders as fellow human beings, because, duh, why wouldn't he see them as fellow human beings? What exactly are these writers trying to say when they suggest human beings are one warhead away from the animal kingdom? Conversely, he doesn't show any preferential treatment of vault dwellers, not Vault 21, nor the boomers. It's his road or the high road.
The next step is to add the boomers' considerable firepower to my growing arsenal, or at the very least, ensure their neutrality.
Here we have prospered and multiplied. Here our mighty guns destroy any savages who might try to harm us before they can even reach our gates. Well, until... But... Not saying you want to harm us or you're a savage, but...
There's more than one way to skin a cat, as the saying goes. Or went, that is. Cats being extinct. I don't promote political assassination as a first option, but it has a long and storied history. I'll consider the boomers neutralized. Yes, though at the time they called themselves the 𝙬𝚘𝚎, a vicious clan, not that that's changed exactly. They were nomads, capable fighters, but their specialty was betrayal. They'd invite travelers into their yurts, drug them, murder, or enslave them. They took pride in their craft. I don't think Omertas saw other people as people at all. Everyone else was just prey. They reminded me of a certain criminal element Vegas used to attract. I told them some stories, gave them some clothes, and they ran with it.
So long as you don't interfere with his parameters, he's happy to let you exist as a known quantity in his equations. This is the case even with the Legion and Caesar, who he's happy to let live, and even discourages the courier from killing just because he happens to know them as a known quantity.
Absolutely not. Caesar is of great use to me. I don't want you harming a hair on that man's head, assuming you could find one.
Mr. House doesn't care who you are, or what you are doing. Just so long as you aren't a threat to him, and therefore mankind, you are free to do as you please. Come to think of it, you could even be hell-bent on his destruction, as Caesar or General Oliver are, and he would still leave you be if he knows a way of dealing with you without resorting to violence, or at least resorting to killing you. I don't think Mr. House is going to be doing any genocides anytime soon, well, unless you're completely hell-bent to the point that there is absolutely no negotiating with you, as with the Brotherhood of Steel, something I have some difficulty believing from the writers, but that's aside from the point. 106. Mr. House's personality. Mr. House, as I've said before, is a pragmatist. He comes across as more machine than man. He's obsessed with efficiency to the point of calculating every possibility to account for every outcome. He is like a machine, cold, calculating, more interested in humankind's salvation out of a sense of progress in the face of the absurd waste of time that will be humanity's extinction than any actual beneficence. The human aspects of his personality, his bodily needs for pleasure and companionship, are met with equally cold efficiency by his machinery. But that is not to say that is all to Mr. House. Scratch away the silicon and you'll find a man who is very much human. If the Courier is Legion affiliated, Mr. House will be horrified at the prospect of the future of humanity being a slave society. If the Courier is Yes Man aligned, Mr. House curses the player. A good karma Courier earns Mr. House's gratitude and begrudging pride in their accomplishments. An evil Courier, conversely, is feared by Mr. House. Mr. House displays a quaint sentimentality regarding his snow globe collection, a blinding nostalgia for his home city of Las Vegas. He criticizes the Brotherhood of Steel for their focus on preserving and inventing weapons over technology that could benefit humanity. There's a particularly interesting interaction between Mr. House and the Vault 21 residents. After convincing the Vaulties to vacate the vault and surrendering ownership of the vault, after Mr. House's faction won the roulette game deciding the fate of the vault, Mr. House stripped the vault for parts and filled it with concrete, forcing all of the previous inhabitants to face the mercy of the wasteland. All but two, that is. When Sarah Weintraub and her brother Sheldon came to Mr. House arguing for the retention of the top levels of Vault 21 for a hotel, Mr. House oddly agreed. Mr. House had intended on filling the entire vault with concrete to prevent recolonization, but he seemed happy to allow the Weintraubs to run the upper level as hotel. Vault 21 can't be so great an economic boom that Mr. House would have reconsidered based on their arguments. If it was, he probably would have turned it into a hotel himself. So this seems to be a small glimmer of humanity, perhaps out of respect for their initiative and enterprise, that he permitted Vault 21 to be preserved. Those are the parameters of Mr. House's altruism. His severe actions, such as eliminating the Brotherhood of Steel or expelling the Vault Dwellers, might make him seem evil, but it's all in the service of his vision of progress. Outside of Mr. House's equations, there is room for a species of kindness. Mr. House isn't going to start any soup kitchens anytime soon, but neither is he going to pursue any personal vendettas or cruelly punish anyone out of pettiness. He certainly won't deny a reasonable request from someone when it does not impede his plans. That said, the moment Vault 21 does impede his plans, Mr. House would destroy it without a single thought. After all, what is one vault weighed against the future of mankind? Now, all of that said, this is not Mr. House. Mr. House isn't some evil corporate vampire, rubbing his calloused hands together at the prospect of profiting from the senseless murder of millions of people he considers to be little more than vermin. This is clearly the writer's own political biases, whether genuine or not, stuffed into a straw man they named Mr. House.
Warning spoilers for New Vegas ending. Play New Vegas, 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 assassinate John Lennon, play New Vegas, play New Vegas, play New Vegas.
Why have you done this? Centuries of reparation. So much good undone. Fool! To let personalities derail future of mankind. Stupid! May there be a hell for you, a Tartarus bleak, unending. Why have you? Slavery, the future of mankind. What have you done?
It was a place of splendor. As magnificent as today's Strip may seem, it's but a shadow of the neon paradise that was Las Vegas. I grew up not far from here, and though I traveled the old world extensively, I never found another place like it. Your next assignment is to locate and destroy remnants of the Mojave chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel. The NCR nearly did the job at Helios 1 a few years ago, but there seem to have been survivors, unfortunately. Given the Brotherhood's fanatical views on technology, they can be counted on to oppose my regime. Please, put them out of my misery. We're talking about a coterie of bulging-eyed fanatics who think all pre-war technology belongs to them. They'll never accept my using an army of robots to defend New Vegas. While it's a fight I can win, I'd rather sidestep it altogether. Handle the Brotherhood, I hope? They're a terrorist group, basically. Militant, quasi-religious fanatics, obsessed with hoarding pre-war technology. Not all technology, mind you. You don't see them raiding hospitals to cart away auto docks or armfuls of prosthetic organs. No, they greatly prefer the sort of technology that puts people in hospitals. Or graves, rather, since hospitals went the way of the dodo. Because they're ridiculous. Because they gallivant around the Mojave, pretending to be knights of yore. Or did, until the NCR showed them that ideological purity and shiny power armor don't count for much when you're outnumbered 15-1. The world has no use for emotionally unstable techno-fetishists. Just wipe them out, will you? What of it? I enjoy them. There's something about a little diorama set inside a glass dome that I find pleasing. If you run across any out in the wastes, turn them in to Jane. She'll compensate you. What else did you want to discuss?
Now, unfortunately, to finish up this critique of the Fallout TV show's Mr. Mouse, we're going to have to get into the most vile topic known to man. Modern politics. I prefer not to get into modern politics for the same reason I prefer not dousing myself in gasoline before juggling flaming torches. And to make it clear, I have about as much interest and knowledge of juggling as I do current affairs. But since this show is insisting on coming across as a political satire, I must assess its ability to satirize as an adaptation of a video game franchise from a politically neutral perspective as an independent and unbiased critic.
As directed by the stone-chiseled codex of the anti-natalist anarcho-primitivist utopia.
Mr. House's character is clearly being retconned due to the writer's lack of political savvy and imagination, both great things to be deficient in when you go about adapting a popular franchise as a political satire. Mr. House is an awful character to use as an example of the shortfallings of laissez-faire economics, or capitalism as we seem to be calling it nowadays. That's because Mr. House, as he is depicted in Fallout New Vegas, is the perfect model for a capitalist. He recognizes a demand in the market, being the NCR's advancement towards the state of a post-industrial economy in which the basic needs of the majority of its citizens are being met.
I repeat, a post-industrial economy where the basic needs are being met for the majority of its citizens.
The NCR can grow food, mine resources, it can manufacture goods out of these resources, it can protect its citizens, but it cannot meet the needs of its people for the higher tiers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: companionship, aesthetics, esteem. In other words, it can keep people alive, but not fulfilled. That is what New Vegas provides. Fulfillment is what it has always provided, a city of services. It's about the only thing out there in the Mojave of any worth.
What is the NCR? A society of people desperate to experience comfort, ease, luxury. A society of customers.
But Mr. House isn't just a parasite hoarding wealth for the sake of funding our lifestyle of degeneracy. His accumulation of wealth is being directed towards something greater than his own petty personal needs. It's being directed towards mankind's salvation, the reignition of civilization, the restoration of humanity to a previously achieved technological state, and progress towards an even greater technological height than even the pre-war era had attained. Mr. House is probably the most altruistic capitalist in the history of Fallout. The show can't deal with this. It doesn't care about representing a pre-existing character, so instead distorts and twists him into whatever shape suits the foreign narrative that molded from this desecrated corpse we once called Fallout. And it isn't even as if Mr. House or his economic philosophy cannot be criticized and used to point out the flaws in the real world. The writers are just too lazy to make any effort to create their story within the limitations of Fallout. For example, Mr. House's economic plan does nothing for the poor of New Vegas in the short term. In fact, in cases like the Omertas, it practically preys on the vulnerable. This is something the writers of New Vegas point out through characters written into the world who would naturally form these criticisms based on their own characterization. This would have been obvious to the showrunners had the series adapting Fallout on the West Coast been co-produced by the people who actually made the West Coast Fallouts, rather than a wooden puppet who dreams of being a real boy and a real boy with the writing skills of a wooden puppet, neither of whom knowing the first thing about the West Coast Fallouts or otherwise not giving a shit. But even without the insights of the creators, it's still not hard to write a criticism of Mr. House's economics. New Vegas doesn't really succeed in providing the higher tiers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It supplies no real comfort, companionship, or intellectual stimulation, just illusions of them. It's a mirage in the desert, luring desperate travelers to their doom. Maybe Mr. House's venture started out good, providing things people needed, but now all he does is sell crappy products, all ditched up nice and pretty that offer nothing of sustenance, where it could be providing people with something real, something that might improve their lives, instead of cheap shots of quickly subsiding dopamine. Vegas is an echo of a more glorious and sublime past that now exists as no more than a mockery of what once was. It's a haven for liars, hacks, fiends, fools, and traitors. And above it all stands Mr. House, a once great entrepreneur, now a callous autocrat completely disconnected from his humanity, farming idiots under the shaky premise that one day he'll take mankind to the stars. One day, once he's stacked enough desecrated corpses to reach the outer limits of the atmosphere. But tell me, do you really want a man so disconnected from his own humanity, so apathetic to the suffering of others, to design the living conditions for a long-term colony vessel? Do you want someone like him in charge of an extraterrestrial frontier society? Does it sound like such a mission would succeed? Would it be even worth it if it did? Would this new world, clean and virgin, not expect the same desecration that was used to propel humanity from their old world? Mr. House might be able to keep people alive, maybe even distracted, but he offers nothing better than that. He'd help mankind to survive, but not to live.
You see that, showrunners? That's me, using the Fallout franchise to construct a genuine work of satire without the need for rewriting the entire story or retconning the lore. Where's my $150 million, Amazon? I don't even believe in everything I've just said. Where's my $150 million?
And with that, we have the capstone on this house of lies that is meant to be the character known as Robert Edwin House. 107. Vault-Tec asks for this parliament of village idiots to come up with experiment ideas after they've built the vaults. Some of the experiments, such as Vault 11, Vault 19, and Vault 111, require specific equipment and architecture to function. Then there are some, such as Vault 15, that require test subjects with specific attributes. This meeting treats things as if the vaults had already had its occupants selected, and Vault-Tec just decided to experiment on them out of the blue, as opposed to the Enclave planning this since 2060 in the earliest. In the original lore, it took around 15 years to construct and plan everything, with some vaults such as Vault 13 still coming up short of being ready for the war. It's certainly cutting it short, but it's not like they did it in a year like they're depicting in the show. As it stands, it's impossible that Vault-Tec could have ever ran those experiments as it's depicted in the Fallout TV show. 108. The vaults were commissioned in Operation Safe House by the US government in 2016 in response to the spread of the new plague. Vault-Tec wasn't selling the vaults commercially, nor did it have a fiduciary responsibility to return on investment. They had already been paid. The social experiments were planned by the Enclave to test human beings for unknown reasons. In Fallout 3 Van Buren, you would discover the Enclave space program, and it would turn out the vaults were designed to figure out how humans reacted to long periods of time trapped in colony ships. The vaults, Vault-Tec, and the Enclave are all based on the MK Ultra experiments, and other such abuses of authority from the government and private companies in US history. It is meant to make you question the powers that be. The original Fallouts did a far better job at this than this pile of steaming offal. 109. West-Tec is a subsidiary of Vault-Tec, not a separate company. It's a military contractor responsible for the Pan-Immunity Virus project and the Pan-Immunity Virus designed to combat the new plague. The virus they invented increased the muscle mass and intelligence of humans and animals, and West-Tec began to experiment with it under government support. It was in 2076 that they created this forced evolutionary virus. This, by the way, implies the meeting is in 2076, which has a lot of problems on its own. West-Tec did not come up with the idea of making super soldiers at some random board meeting, which led to the creation of super mutants. The super mutants in question were the Master's invention. Falling into the Mariposa vat in Fallout 1 before the Master took it over resulted in humans and animals becoming mutants, but not super mutants, as seen with Harold and Richard Gray. Therefore, the idea that West-Tec even had a clue what they were doing with FEV1 at this time, enough to confidently create a vault for making super soldiers, is unlikely. 110. The West-Tec research team were arrested by the soldiers in Mariposa after they discovered the testing on not illegal immigrants, but military prisoners.
Fallout America didn't have a problem with illegal immigrants crossing the border because there was no border. America had annexed much of Mexico and all of Canada. Additionally, this is a time when there wasn't enough fuel for commercial vehicles, food shortages, and the new plague. So not exactly a period where immigration was an issue. Even if it were, America's at war with China and under martial law. So any illegal immigrants insane enough and tough enough to somehow ford the Rio Grande River and cross the Chihuahuan Desert on foot without assistance from smugglers would likely be corralled into the same camps as the dissidents, POWs, and people with so much as a drop of Chinese blood in their veins. Early strains of FEV was tested on military prisoners. Presumably protesters, rioters, POWs, communist sympathizers, and the equally loathsome species of mutant known as
Canadians.
They were all exposed to FEV1. This FEV wasn't the one that made super mutants. That's FEV3. But it did horrifically mutate them. The soldiers started summary executions, and Captain Roger Maxon interrogated the scientists. Maxon learned that it was his own government that gave the orders, and so Maxon, with a heavy heart, mutinied and sent his message that his soldiers and he were seceding from the Union. By the way, this is the start of the Brotherhood of Steel, and the reason they base all their ranks on medieval terms instead of US military terms. They are antithetical to the United States of America and its military hierarchy, as they view them as having perpetrated a crime against humanity in the unrestrained research of weapons of mass destruction. This crime committed by the United States government is the root of the Brotherhood's philosophy of safeguarding technology from those who would abuse it, which is why they wouldn't have a US flag flying beside a Brotherhood of Steel flag. It would be like a Confederate flag flying next to a Union flag. They also wouldn't base their own flag off the American flag. That would be like if a faction of the German army discovered the unethical experiments at Auschwitz, rightfully turned away in disgust, executed the SS in charge, seceded from the Third Reich, and then adopted the swastika as the symbol of their new organization. It was the bombs dropping that saved Maxson from being caught and executed, and subsequently it doomed the West-Tech researchers. So, therefore, question. If West-Tech knew when the bombs were going to fall, why weren't they prepared? Answer: because they didn't. Obviously. 111. Von Felden is a scientist mentioned in passing in the Roger Maxson logs that detail the military mutiny in the Mariposa military base. The actual lead scientist is called Anderson, but for some reason these hackneys made Von Felden the head of the West-Tech Corporation. Clearly this was meant to be Anderson in this meeting, and the writers just carelessly mixed up the names. 112. Julia Masters was Chief Finance Officer for Retcons. She wasn't a CEO. The point I'm trying to make here is that this is a meeting where Vault-Tec is planning treason, genocide, human experimentation, and world domination. All they need is one leak, and the whole ship sinks. So either the writers are stupid enough to think Vault-Tec would tell the company janitor these plans if they had shown up to the meeting, or the writers were given the name of a Retcon employee and just decided she was a CEO now, just so they could jangle keys to the rapturous applause of the Bethesda shills trying to insult you by telling you this shows that the writers are respectful of the source material. And this is great. Julia Masters is a corporate spy, possibly for Poseidon Energy, so already you've got a leak in this ship. 113. Retcon doesn't make robots that deliver milk. It's a rocket company from New Vegas. It stands for Rocket Engineering and Production Company of Nevada. You idiots. Also, Robco owned Retcon from 2075, so Mr. House is her boss. Why are they both here at this meeting? Obviously because the writers don't know this. By the way, I am aware that Retcon accepted a government contract for creating a plasma rifle to replace the plasma caster. This is due to Retcon being bought out by Mr. House and the overlap between rocket science and plasma energy weapons, allowing them to weaponize technology previously used for rockets. There happens to be absurdly less overlap between rocket science and artificially intelligent milk delivery, to the extent that it's obvious the writers don't know what Retcon was, and just decided that Retcon is a company that delivers milk so they could put in this funny-wunny line about putting a robot that delivers milk in charge of an entire vault of people. 114. War. War never changes. Does
not mean what these writers think it means, and they should be ashamed of hijacking it to push this half-assed attempt at acting like they're being satirical. These writers wouldn't know satire if it ran up to them on its goat's legs and slapped them in the face with direct phallus. I will not yet go into the philosophy behind this phrase that underpins the themes of a 30-year-old franchise originally written by some of the best RPG writers and developers in the history of gaming, men that in a sensible industry would be leading it by now, but all I have to say is this: war never changes. Taking those words and putting them into the mouth of a genocidal idiot bent on starting a nuclear war because their company's profits are down for this quarterly return is a slap in the face of not only the creators, not only the long-term fans, not only the show's audience, it is a slap in the face of every person who has ever played Fallout. Now I know some people like being slapped in the face when they're being fucked in the ass, and to those people I would calmly suggest they go fuck themselves somewhere else and leave us and our 30-year-old franchises alone.
115. 2015. Vault-Tec did not drop the bombs. It makes zero sense for them to do so, and we were told explicitly who did it in Fallout 2 by the pre-war government. And given President Richardson had not lied about anything else, it seems unreasonable to assume he would lie about this in particular, especially when it makes perfect sense that China might escalate the war, given they face an existential crisis. This is literally the only scenario where military doctrine of a nuclear nation such as America or Russia would permit a launch. The fact is supported by creators such as 𝐻𝚘𝚛𝚎, who have gone on record to say that the Chinese dropped the bomb first because of the development of biological weapons by the US government.
Nuked is bio weapons were illegal, and somehow China found out we were doing FEV, and they're like, you have to stop it, and we went, okay. And all we did is move it. All we did is move it over.
Earth-shattering,
to the
what you just said.
Really? Is that stuff people don't know?
Well, people actually debate over who shot first. Like a
they do?
solo thing.
Oh, well, then I don't know. Who knows? It was probably some...
And specifically, FEV's birthplace in the glow happens to have been bombed a ludicrous number of times according to the Brotherhood of Steel, which is the cause of the release of the virus in the form of radioactive particles known as fallout that infected the South California area with airborne FEV. Along with this, we have the 𝐻𝚘 in San Francisco, descended from the Chinese nuclear submarines that bombed the West Coast. Bethesda themselves followed up this idea until recently with the existence of not one but 2 Chinese submarines on the East Coast in 2 out of the 3 of their Fallout entries. One of these submarines even had the original sailors who confessed to bombing the East Coast at the start of the nuclear exchange. Lastly, there were warnings from the missile defense systems, particularly in Fallout 4's switchboard. But here's the kicker. Fallout 2 makes it clear that who started it doesn't matter.
War never changes. The end of the world occurred pretty much as we had predicted. Too many humans, not enough space or resources to go around. The details are trivial and pointless. The reasons, as always, purely human ones. The Earth was nearly wiped clean of life.
The point, to reference 𝐻𝚘𝚎 again, is to explore the politics of a post-apocalypse. It's good that they had an answer to this question, but nevertheless, it wasn't something that had any narrative relevance. What does it matter to the Brotherhood of Steel, or NCR, or Caesar's Legion, or New Vegas, as to which dead nation fired first? It's not the bombs that matter, it's the fallout. We had our answer in the opening of Fallout 1, and again repeated in Fallout 2. War never changes. Nuclear apocalypse is the end point of humanity so long as they continue such reckless violence against their fellow man. It's why factions die out, and it's why you, the player, are given so many peaceful options for resolutions in the game. But now, this putrid waste has taken away the very essence of Fallout,
and bastardized it,
subverted it, and contradicted the very authors of this work by changing the meaning of war never changes being about the violent history of mankind, ultimately leading to the natural conclusion of self-destruction to
Vault-Tec needs a return on investment because Vault-Tec's evil.
Oh, great. So in other words, war never changes is a load of hogwash. Humans aren't inherently violent because it's actually evil companies like Vault-Tec that will bring Armageddon. So in other words, rather than trying to curb mankind's appetite for war to find a way to achieve unity and peace, what we really need to do as a species is not allow a situation in which any private company could potentially profit off self-annihilation and the destruction of all of its customers and assets.
Oh wait, we've already done that! Because no private company, no matter how stupidly led, could ever consider the idea of blowing itself up to be more profitable a proposition than simply not blowing itself up.
Greater men than these have argued capitalism to be a driving force in current, past, and future conflicts, and provided more convincing arguments than these people could ever possibly achieve. And never has anyone right, left, or center of the political spectrum ever convincingly argued that a single powerful company, in cooperation with its fellow capitalists, would deliberately bring about nuclear Armageddon because it sold a means of survival, because such an argument is so ridiculous it could only be interpreted as the product of a mind incapable of cognitive thought, or some kind of poor attempt at a joke. This idea is something impossible in the Fallout universe. It is a retroactive decanonization of previously established lore. It is, to put it very simply, a retcon. Mind you, not even an original retcon. This idea was originally put forward for the Fallout movie, in which the man who started the war was none other than the Vault 13 overseer of all people, which along with other ridiculous ideas led to the cancellation of this rancid script, as clearly Zenimax of all companies was led by gentlemen with more faith in humanity than Microsoft. These were better times for media when we demanded quality, not distraction. Wagner, Geneva, and Nolan, by writing a retcon into Fallout that destroys the very concept behind this franchise in an unwitting act of self-destruction, you yourself provide a more convincing argument for what will bring the downfall of our entire species than any philosopher, writer, or game developer could possibly hope to create. Bravo! 116. Ghouls having the ability to survive without food, water, or oxygen in a coffin for half a century like they're fucking vampires or something. 117. Ghouls being able to sew their fingers back on. Ghouls are supposed to be falling apart, slowly dying. That's why they're missing their noses. Why would they be able to simply put their fingers back on? And if that's the case, why wouldn't they have put their noses back on? 118. Usually a fella doesn't have to eat a fella. Cannibalism in California was rare, even in Fallout 1. There was one instance of where you found someone was selling human flesh and passing it off as animal meat, but that was more a Soylent Green reference than anything. In Fallout 2, bigots believed tribals were backward savages who indulge in cannibalism, and the player can tell the saloon/funeral home owner in Redding that their tribe were indeed cannibals, to the shock of the civilized bartender. Whether the chosen one is kidding or not is left up to the player. One of the tribes in New Vegas were also said to be cannibals. However, the tribe in question ate human meat more as a delicacy than for sustenance. The idea that Cooper is implying that everyone has to engage in cannibalism to survive is just dross. It's made worse by the fact he's a ghoul. In Fallout 3, the prejudice around ghouls was based on the erroneous presumption that they were like zombies in that they ate human flesh and needed to be shot in the head. This was supposed to be a joke at the bigots' expense, but the writers genuinely took that at face value. 119. The Enclave turrets from Fallout 2 are plasma turrets, not machine guns. When you set off a turret, this doesn't happen. Rather, this does.
You have perished.
120. The sign on said turrets doesn't say, quote, remain calm. That would be idiotic. It says, quote, tampering with it will most likely result in death. The turrets in original Fallout actually had a witty, funny joke on a sign that the writers chose to exchange for something dumb and less funny. Hi, this is the editor. So it just occurred to me that some people in the world don't understand the concept of a joke. This is a conclusion I drew from looking at reactions to the Fallout TV show. So let me explain. The joke behind the remain calm sign on the turret is that it's ironic that a turret shooting at you is telling you to remain calm. That's it. That's the joke. It doesn't make sense in universe because why would anyone put that sign on a turret designed to presumably keep illiterate tribals or literate NCR Rangers and Brotherhood assassins out of your Enclave base? The joke, quote, tampering with it will most likely result in death, is a play on traditional warning signs found on electrical appliances. It's a double meaning. Messing around with it might kill you from an accidental electric shock, but it's also a turret designed to kill you with plasma. It's ironic because the Health and Safety Department of the Enclave put a safety warning on a literal turret. It also implies the genocidal evil faction has a Health and Safety Department, which is funny and also not only possible but highly likely. It implies that at some point, someone looked at the turret designed to fire hot plasma at people and thought it might need a sign to stop people from getting shocked trying to fix it. Then there's even a satirical layer, as the Enclave are literally remnants of the pre-war government and the ruling elite. It's a reference to the hypocrisy of the American government that pretends to value human life while leading the world in devising and mass-producing the most deadliest weapons known to man. It also touches on the frustrating bureaucracy that the American military must constantly deal with. The nonsensical red tape that, for example, prevents soldiers from smoking a cigarette while being taught how to fire an M2 Browning. Which, by the way, is a scenario I can easily picture in the Navarro base, as even 100 years after a nuclear apocalypse, the American military will still be using the M2 Browning, and the US government will still be trying to stop their soldiers from smoking tobacco. Lastly, the meta of the situation is equally ironic, as the player can only read this sign while covertly infiltrating the Enclave base. The developers are breaking the fourth wall by telling the player that obviously footering with a turret will raise some eyebrows and result in alerting the base. They didn't even give you an option to do that, so instead they gave you a sign that basically tells you that you are an idiot. That's what makes this a good joke. To put it basically, for the most part, a good joke gets more funny the more you think about it. A bad joke, in contrast, gets less funny. Therefore, the original joke, whilst being more lore accurate, would have been more funny and taken less effort on behalf of the writers to implement in this adaptation. Therefore, the writers have made an effort to be less funny than the original Fallout, which itself is the best joke these clowns have ever pulled off. 121. I doubt it's that easy to steal important technology from the Enclave. In Fallout 2, your character had to pass multiple security checks to pass themselves off as an Enclave recruit, or try to sneak in without detection, which was far harder. And this was in a relatively new base where security was somewhat lax. Even then, it was very lucky that most presumed the drooling tribal in a vault suit was some kind of lost recruit. Some would even say convenient, but certainly not as convenient as 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐺 just literally stealing the secret to world domination and walking out of there with his dog like he was going on vacation. 122. Cold fusion isn't a new invention in the Fallout franchise. The writers probably thought they were clever in inventing it for the show, but small cold fusion reactors have existed in the canon since Fallout 2. In fact, this isn't even the first time a small cold fusion device has been a MacGuffin which the story hinges upon. Cold fusion reactors are a part of the 𝐞𝐭𝐫, according to the official Wasteland Survival Guide that came with Fallout 2, which is canon to the Fallout TV show because we literally see the page that describes this on screen here. Vault City had itself a cold fusion reactor that was straining to provide enough power for their settlement. So in other words, given there are hundreds of vaults by 2296, there are potentially hundreds of cold fusion reactors everywhere, and there have been for around 2 centuries. So what does this mean? Well, it means the entire plot-driving MacGuffin is just bunk. Why would Moldaver be trying so hard to find the cold fusion device when these things are literally in every settlement that ever used a 𝐞𝐭𝐫 to start its society? This includes Vault City, Arroyo, and a little-known place you might be familiar with called Shady Sands. This piece of information is the last of the Jenga pieces to be removed before the structural collapse of the entire premise of this show, a fitting contradiction to conclude with.
123. Ghoul juice.
Oh, hold on, I almost forgot ghoul juice. How silly of me. The ghoul juice, as we've unanimously decided to call it, seeing as the showrunners didn't think it important enough to give a name to such a narratively significant drug, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, retcon in the series. It's so plainly obvious. A great big rotting elephant in the room. Even the shills can't ignore it, which makes sense, as it's so obviously a retcon that even the most casual Fallout player could pick up on it. Obviously, ghouls don't go feral if they don't use some special inhaler drug every 5 minutes. This has never once existed in the game, in any shape or any form, nor does any inhaler or any related inhaler cause ghoulification. From Fallout 1 to Fallout 4 and even Fallout 76, the canon has been clear as polished glass and solid as granite. Ghouls come from radiation and airborne FEV. Ghouls go feral as they get older. They lose their minds due to a combination of insanity and the degeneration of their bodies. In Fallout 2, the ghouls required constant medical attention to treat their slowly deteriorating bodies. Ghouls and even super mutants were slowly aging mentally and going senile. After Fallout 3, it was also suggested that high radiation could make ghouls go feral. At no point does a ghoul take a magic potion to stop it going feral. This was made up for the show to give Cooper a reason to sell Lucy for organs and turn Thaddeus into a ghoul. I sincerely doubt it's going to play much into Season 2 unless the writers want to use it as another Deus Ex Machina to make things happen. I doubt Season 2's ghoul juice will be consistent with what we've seen either. I mean, we didn't even get a name for it, or where it comes from. It's clear that the writers just flippantly invented a wrecking ball that demolished 30 years of lore for an excuse to send the characters on a side quest. Which, frankly, you just have to stand back in awe of. They destroyed 30 years of lore just to piss about with the script. This won Best Adaptation. Look, am I losing my mind here? This won Best Adaptation, and it created a drug that it didn't even give a name or an origin of, that it just inserted into the story, and it came from nowhere, and it destroys basically the entire mechanics of a race that was there since the very original part of Fallout, like a species that's been there since the very first game, and we've known all about how it became a ghoul since the very first game, and we had 30 years of lore. 30 years of consistent lore. And it just did away with it, so it could make a joke. This one, Best Adaptation. How is this? And everyone loved it, and nobody talks about this, and it won Best Adaptation, and it... Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, here's another editor note. In the time I spent editing this script, I rewatched the show, and it has been as bad for my insanity as one would expect. But in the process, I found even more retcons. Retcons in this show are like rats. They're everywhere. And even when you think you've got all of them, there's always just a few more. So, without further ado, 124. The government did not sell the survival of humanity to the private sector, as Bud has just said here. Vault-Tec was a government contractor. Do you understand what that is, showrunners? It means under close government supervision. The Vaults and FEV were government projects that they couldn't afford to be leaked to their enemy, the Chinese. A private company would be free. Vault-Tec would literally have to show the government everything they were doing, even cooperate with military and intelligence personnel who would be on site. That's why Roger Maxon was stationed with the scientists at Mariposa. So, in other words, while they were stuffing Budweiser's smooth brain into a vacuum cleaner and building up all of these cryopods, there was likely a CIA agent or an army officer sitting watching them, likely in disbelief. So, unless you would like to imply Vault-Tec somehow managed all of this in secret from the US government, from the Enclave, yeah, I don't think so. 125. Vault-Tec's vaults aren't designed to keep a population alive for centuries. With the exception of Vault 101, all of the vaults had opened by Fallout 2. Fallout 2 takes place in 2241, so that's 164 years. This is around the time Vault 13 is given the all-clear by the Enclave, as its occupants were intended to be used for testing when needed. However, according to the Fallout Bible 0, Vault 13 was meant to stay closed for 200 years to test prolonged isolation, and yes, that was the experiment Bethesda would copy for Vault 101. Why did two vaults have the same experiment? Don't ask questions. Vault 15 was meant to open after 15 years, and 8, a control vault, was meant to open after 10. Some vaults were even meant to open after just 6 months. Bethesda added Vault 101 basically as a bunch of keys to jangle for older fans after they took over the franchise, and to provide a nice hour-long introductory playpen to impress the game reviewers that only played these games for 2 hours before giving it a 10 out of 10 badass seal of approval. But even there, all of the other vaults were already opened. The excuse used was that Vault 101 was intended on being closed indefinitely, but even in the Capital Wasteland, all the other vaults were already opened. The excuse used for 101 was that it was intended on being closed indefinitely. Also a convenient reason for why it wasn't given a GECK that was a MacGuffin for the entire plotline of Fallout 3, but that's besides the point. But wait, but if it was supposed to be closed indefinitely, then why would the door still be able to open? Never mind, don't ask questions. Vault 101 can't last any longer than 200 years anyways, as the Lone Wanderer explained to the Overseer Alphonse Almodovar, that the genetic pool of 101 would restrict it from going on any further than 200 years. Anyway, with that aside, it's clear that the vaults can only last up to about 200 years, but those ones that do and can are basically exceptional. Most only last decades. Therefore, the statement that all of our vaults are designed to last hundreds of years is false. This also implies Vault 4 and the interconnected vaults shouldn't exist. At the very least, Vault 4 shouldn't exist. It should be either struggling to maintain a non-inbred population or incredibly overpopulated. Vault 4 was only intended to last 5 years as a demonstration vault as well, so presumably it shouldn't have the resources to survive a decade, never mind over 200 years. Furthermore, where would they have gotten the resources for all this stuff for their bestiality experiments? Presumably it wasn't there to begin with, so in other words, yet more questions that needn't be asked. 125. Count them. There is 125 contradictions between this show and the games, and I went easy. I didn't count the stupidity going on in Vault 32, 31, and 33, because it could be easily argued that these qualities such as casual incest were limited to these particular vaults. I didn't count any stupid statements like this, because they could merely be a clearly idiotic character's mistake. But still, we have 125 contradictions.
125 retcons, ranging from minor to absolutely universe-breaking. 125 slaps in the face, including the one that takes the very meaning, the core moral of this franchise, all it had left, and perverted it and twisted it until it was nothing more than a joke. 125, and these two walked up on stage with Ella Purnell on their leash, a talented actress whose talents have been wasted in the televised desecration of not one, but two video game franchises in what can only be called a genre of humiliation. And I should point out, only she and she alone had the self-awareness, the dignity to refuse the microphone. 125, and Jeff Keighley shook their hands, still wet with the blood of a franchise they did nothing to create. 125, and these two so-called men, without a single bit of shame, accepted an award for Best Adaptation on behalf of their pet showrunners, as they were too busy scouring what little remained of Black Isle's fallout. 125! And Christopher Nolan's idiot brother outright mocked the fans of New Vegas, boldly admitting they were destroying everything they loved on purpose, or at least they were aware of the damage they had done and felt no remorse, boasting of his crimes like a slasher taunting his next victim. 125, and this living justification for the razing of Hobbiton to the ground waddled on stage as fast as his stumps could carry him and grasped with his little rat hands the award he desperately wished he was receiving for Starfield, and thanked the Fallout fans he had stabbed in the back by making this lore-demolishing show canon. 125, and the video game adaptation adaptation died that day to the sound of thunderous applause.
Now, I want you, after this entire video, to look me in the eye and tell me that you believe this show is a faithful adaptation of the Fallout franchise. Unless you can rectify all of the 125 lore contradictions I have just painstakingly described to you, you cannot honestly think this is a faithful adaptation, much less than the best adaptation. I'm sorry, but unless I am wrong 125 times, and I do not dismiss the possibility, then the problem is clearly not me, or the Fallout franchise, or even the writers of the Fallout TV show. No, the problem is with your perception, and frankly, I don't accept that. I don't accept your dismissal of these arguments on the basis that I am some Fallout elitist, or New Vegas fanboy, or whatever other derogatory term you've conjured to rob me of my humanity and devalue an argument you cannot hope to counter. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the true meaning behind War Never Changes. Because how can mankind possibly move forward as a species when it refuses to do so much as discuss something without prejudice, to peacefully engage in negotiation and compromise with their fellow man? So long as we continue to stubbornly hold on to our positions and refuse to challenge our own and others' beliefs, so long as we refuse to place our own survival and thriving as a species above our own petty tribal group, so long as we make disagreement a reason to demonize our opponents as less than human, less than ourselves, then our species is certainly set on a course for self-annihilation, and there is no hope.
There is no hope. Leave now. Leave while you still have
hope.
To summarize, this Fallout television adaptation is fundamentally in conflict with all the lore of previous Fallouts. It's clear the writers wanted to create their own vision of a post-apocalyptic action comedy irrespective of Fallout and its lore. They clearly had no intention of adapting Fallout, more so than of piggybacking off recognizable names and imagery to prop up their own unrelated story and world. It is a tale as old as time. When creating a new entry in an established franchise, you must work within the constraints of that which has came before, balancing the new with the old. You cannot have your cake and eat it. You can't have the advantage of a pre-established canon without respecting it. Hollywood is notorious for its disrespect towards video games, and so is it any surprise that they fail utterly to respect the pre-established canon of something they see as beneath them. The Fallout writers thought we were so stupid that we wouldn't notice, or so apathetic that we wouldn't care when they attempted to rewrite the entire world of Fallout. They set out to create their own story and invent a new lore that was absolutely contradictory to everything that came before. But lore never changes.
Whoa, easy there, easy. You've been out cold a couple of days now. Why don't you just relax a second? Get your bearings. Let's see what the damage is. How about your name? Can you tell me your name? I can't say it's what I'd have picked for you, but if that's your name, that's your name. I'm Doc Mitchell. Welcome to Good Spot.